What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on Brandon's K24 CSS. Got some goodies here. CSS, got his O-ring. Got some Waseco pistons, manly rods, all the king bearing goodies, main and connecting rod bearings. I think these are ARP studs for the ARP mains. A Type S oil pump. Don't know if we'll be getting to fully doing this today or not. Maybe in a future video. And yep, all seals, main seal, time and cover seals. Oh, and he's got thrust washers. Okay, all right, cool. All right, so just got the block back from CSS. He's brake cleaning everything out right now. Nice and minty. First thing you're gonna want to do when you get the block back from the machine shop, especially even if they jet wash it, you want to make sure everything's clean. So we're just spraying everything out here with brake clean. Oh shit! All right, so now that you've cleaned everything up, we're gonna start with the main bearings. Here's what support your crankshaft. Don't want to lube in here. You don't want to spin a bearing when you first start the motor up, so you want to keep this part of the mains dry, and you want to lube the inside of your bearings. That way the crank will spin freely when you first start it up and you won't spin a main bearing. One other thing you want to do is make sure that you got all these perfectly clean. You don't want any dust or debris in here that'll potentially get into your bearing. Also, the bearings are directional. You can't just throw them in however you want. There is a oh boy, hold on. All right, y'all, so we're back. You can see it's a little bit darker outside. Your boy Brandon ordered the wrong main bearings, so we're kind of put on hold for that, at least until tomorrow. But I think in the meantime, we're gonna put the pistons and rods together. Bust the wrist pins out. Show you all how to assemble these. Just give us something to do in the meantime. And the rings too. I guess we could put the rings on. Alright, what's up, guys? We're back with the piston and rods. Give y'all a quick rundown of basically how this is going to work. Your pistons are going to slide over your rods as such, and you slide your wrist pin through. And we're going to show you, we're just giving y'all a rundown real quick. You're going to slide these through, and then you're going to take these circlip and get your circlip and put it in the little slot there on either side, and go ahead and throw the rings on too while they're here. So we're gonna go ahead and get the whole piston rod setup completely put together for y'all. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these 9 times out of 10 come with a little bit of lube on them already. Normally the pistons are directional. As you can see, the slots here are bigger than the slots here. So one of these sides is the intake, one of them is the exhaust. If I had to guess, I would say this is probably the intake side, but probably check with the packaging on that. So basically, to start, you're going to get your wrist pin started in the piston like such. Take your rod like that, slide the whole assembly through, and then you're going to, can't do it right this second, but you're going to pop your circlip in both sides, and yeah, I guess I'll give you all a quick update when we do that. Alright, so this is a little bit of a tricky process here. Very hard. It's probably a tool for this. It's not like, see, mine had the little snap ring holes and you could just get the pliers in there and just yeah, these are a little more turbo tough to put together.
Alright, so what you want to do is you kind of want to set this in this little edge right here, and then slowly try to hold it down. And then, you know, Waseco says not to fucking use some shit, but I was just using needle nose pliers to just push it in, and then it slowly starts to seat on either side, and it's actually pretty easy.
So when you go to do rings, you got a couple things going on here. You're gonna have 2 very thin rings. They usually come like on top of each other. These go on either side of this. This is the oil control ring. So this is going to sit right in this bottom groove here. You slide this over top first, and then you put these over top of that on either side. You can slide that over as such. Just like that. Make sure it's nice and flat, it's not overlapped here. Grab your two thinnest rings. I would say these normally don't have an indication mark as to what side goes up. Probably doesn't matter. I'm gonna put one on the top of the oil control ring and one on the bottom. The camera's gonna focus, but I have one of the smaller rings on top of that oil control seal right here. I'm gonna put the second one on the bottom, so it should be one on either side. For this one, I usually go from the bottom of the piston and slide it over the bottom. And you're going to come up like that. Slide this side in. Boom, just like that. We've got one on one side, one on the other side, and we've got the oil control in the middle. Next, got two more rings left. There's going to be a thicker and a thinner. Again, the thicker one, you want it to be in the middle. It's only going to fit the one way. If you put the thinner one in the thicker hole, you're not going to be able to put the thick one in the thin hole. You done messed up. Don't do that. And again, make sure you have the mark facing the top of the piston. So I like to kind of walk it around. I'll get one side started and I'll slowly go around the edge of the piston like this. Some people prefer different methods. I do it like this. I try to refrain from pulling on the ring like this and moving it outwards. You will snap it right here. No good. Now you gotta wait, get more another set of rings. So again, I'm gonna set this in the middle, just like that. Now that's seated, letters facing up. Very important, when you put rings together, you don't want the gaps for your rings to be in the same spot, or you'll have, the oil can get through, get in the spark plugs, you can have blow by, bunch of different issues. So when you put the middle ring on, this top ring, you want to have it 180 degrees out. You want it to be, if you got a gap here, you want the gap on top to be completely over here. Same thing, keep the letter facing up. I'm gonna slide this final ring over. There we go. So I'm just gonna slide this in that channel right there. Boom. Now I've got this gap here, and this gap is approximately 180 out, and that's how you put rings on a piston. The thing I want to explain real quick about the piston rings, especially on kits like this specific kit that we got that's made specifically for a K24 engine, you usually do not have to gap the rings. They usually come within the ballpark spec. The one way you can check is you can take your rings out and you can put them down into the cylinder, take the top of the piston upside down like this, and you can push the ring down a little bit and then get a feeler gauge in there and check for the clearance. But 9 times out of 10, if you are buying a kit, say you're buying Wiseco pistons for K24, which we have here, 9 times out of 10 the rings are already going to be in spec, so you probably do not have to worry about gapping your rings, checking the spec. You're going to be okay. All right, y'all, so next day we back in the shop with it. Brandon went and picked up an exact copycat of what we already had. I didn't realize that the tangs for the main bearings are in the center. I think they're on the center on the girdle side. That's the girdle, right? Yeah. Yes, okay, so the tangs for the rod bearings are in the center. I didn't know that. Actually, they're all still in there. Yeah, so those are in the center, and then on the actual block side, they're on the side. So we thought we had the wrong main bearings. We actually had the correct ones the whole time. So we're gonna go ahead and get those bearings put in. Again, recap, when you're putting your main bearings in, you do not want to lube this side. You want to just push them in and then lube that side. So we got the line up out here tonight. We got my hatch, Kira's hatch, Brandon's hatch. Yes, sir. Got Brandon being a good technician over here, getting all his Honda bond off the girdle. Here's a quick recap. You want to line up your tang side with your tang side. So this side has the little indicator right there. Bring it over here. That side has the indicator, so you want to line the indicator side up with the indicator side. And these should push right in. Just like that. Also, make sure they are seated all the way. You see we've got the tang inside the little tang hole there. Alright guys, so we finished putting in the main bearings. You see right here, all lined up with the tangs, every single slot here. Alrighty, so we have the main bearings placed in the block right now. Next up, we're going to use some assembly lube. I prefer Permatex Ultra Slick. Use it on my orange car, it works great. Don't be shy using assembly lube. You know, first time you start your motor up, it's not going to have any oil in it, so you want to make sure you get plenty of lube in there, so the first start all your components stay lubricated. So I don't go lightly with this at all, so you can be pretty liberal with it. Go ahead and get a good coating on each main bearing. Your side, but again, it'll work, especially for how long it may be before this motor actually gets its initial startup. It's always good to go overkill with the assembly lube. When your first startup, it'll all come out anyways. When you change your oil for the first time, all the assembly lube will come out. But all this does is it ensures that your bearings and everything just stays, like cams, you put on your cams, make sure that everything stays lubricated on the initial startup. Alright, next step, now that you've got all your main bearings lubed up, we still have to put the thrust washers in, the thrust bearings, but we're going to do that after we put the crank in. So go ahead and get this bad boy right up out of here. Preparing the crank here, you get a little brake clean spray down. You get what I'm saying? You feel me? Make sure that's all nice and cleaned up. Same process on the girdle side. Do not lube the outside. Your tangs are aligned. Yep, also make sure they are flush. Yeah. So back over these with the Ultra Slick. Put a little bit of Ultra Slick on every single bearing. So we're also going to put a little bit of assembly lube on the crank side here. Like I said earlier, you can never have too much assembly lube. Now that that's done, put a little coating on the girdle side. Alright, so before we also put the girdle on, we're going to put the thrust bearings slash washers in. You lube the back side of those. You want the flat side facing the back. You want the ridge side facing out. So you kind of just rotate it so it's nice and flat and show up on the other side.
I'm on there.
Hit with some Scotch-Brite. Same thing on the girdle side. Girdle is nice and clean, so we're going to go ahead and put some Hunt Bond on that, and then the girdle should be ready to go onto the block. Actually, on the girdle side, probably don't want a lot. This isn't like an oil pan, so just get something on there, nice thin layer. Alright, so we got a pretty decent coverage all the way around. Brandon ordered himself some custom ARP girdle studs. So what?
Main studs.
Main studs.
For since this is a not RSX or a performance K24 bottom end. This is out of a CRV. The old oil pump is not as big as a Type S, which is much smaller. The girdles are different for the different K24s, so these are made specially for this style that isn't a performance K24.
Same as like you would do head studs. You're gonna bottom these out basically finger tight, and they have the little Allen head in the top. You're basically gonna maybe get the right Allen and just do maybe a quarter turn, something very minimal. Also, do not put the ARP lubricant in the block side. You want to use that for the part where the nut is at. Alright, so those are all seated. You see they're all pretty much the exact same height, which means they are right Yep. Snicker on there, yes sir. Alright, so this is where you use your ARP lubricant at the top when you put the nuts on. So we're going to put a little bit of lubricant on the threads here, nothing crazy. That just helps to prevent any resistance when you torque it down. You want to have a true torque. If you torque something down with no lubricant and it hits a rough spot, it will throw your wrench off. No matter how expensive your wrench is, it will throw the torque reading off. So we want to make sure that our nuts aren't hitting any resistance when we're torquing them down. So that's why they give you this. Use it. And like I said earlier, the ARP grease is just to make sure that you don't run into any resistance when you're torquing your bolts down. If you were to tighten them with no grease or any lubricant, what can happen is when you get to your final torque reading, the nut could catch some sort of resistance, whether if it's heat or something else, and it could throw your torque reading off. It's ARP, baby. So that stuff's gonna work. So you put your washer on first, followed by your nut. Bust this bad boy out right here. Alright, so going 60 foot-pounds. Kind of making this up as we go. So we're gonna start with 18 foot-pounds and torque sequence that I've also made up myself. I'm gonna do it similar to how I would do head studs. I'm gonna do it the same way. Let's go ahead and get everything snug down first. Alrighty, so I just did another step of 35. Now I'm going to 50. And go up to 60 for the final torque. Sorted. Alright, so all these are at 60. I'm going to let them sit for a couple minutes and then recheck all of them just to make sure that they're still at 60. Alright, so we got the everything's torqued down. We found our bolts here on the side for the girdle. Also, PSA, install your damn oil squirters. Alright, don't do what we did and put that in way after the fact when it's nearly impossible to get them in there. She's ready for the 1000. It's ready for all the sauce. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and drop the piston rod setup in here. Again, it's the same situation with the rod bearings as the main bearings. You want to make sure that you only lube the inside, the part that's going to be sitting on the crankshaft. Don't lube the outside or you're going to be one unhappy person when you start that bad boy up. And for the tang side on tang side. So do not mix up your caps with your rods. They're to go to the same ones. Do not mix them up. So only do one at a time. Now, when you get that ready and all situated, you're going to need a ring compressor to compress the piston rings through the deck. So I actually have one from work for 87mm, which is what we have here. And you slowly place the piston inside there. Be careful to make sure that all the rings are going in smoothly and you're not getting any rings caught up in the process. Let's get it started. We're going to spray some WD-40 in there. Alright, so now we need to make sure we're going the right direction. So the dimples on the piston have two different sizes. I believe this is the intake side, correct? Yep. Intake side is bigger. So looking at the motor, this is the crank side. So K series intake would be this side, right? Yep, because time change, same size as starter. So we're going to place it so that the intake side is on the intake side. Also, make sure your crank is out of the way. You don't want to, so like you can see the crank is right there. We're going to push that piston down. It's going to go right into the crankshaft. So I'm going to have that at the very bottom. And get that seated in. Spray some W up in that bad boy. Get it all nice and soaked. Can't hurt nothing. You want to make this a smooth process. smooth as possible. Alright, so before you push your piston down the cylinder, this isn't really the most ideal tool here, but you want to make sure that the ring compressor is completely seated on the deck of the block, or else when you go to push this down, the rings can get caught up at the very end and snap. So you want to avoid that. So once you are sure that your compressor is fully seated and you have your piston going in the correct position, you should be able to just push piston right down the motor. Right. You're going to want to guide your rod onto the crankshaft. So using a soft rubber mallet, now that you have your rod all the way through, you're going to grab the opposite end, tang side on tang side. Okay. Tang side goes to tang side. Boom. Let's go ahead and get them all the way seated. Now, I work at Honda, and I've had a car before where we do piston rings a lot of times on V6s. And I had one time where I only partially tightened or torqued the rod caps. And I did them all, and then the crank didn't want to turn, so I'm actually going to torque this first before I even go to the next rod. So we'll go ahead and get the torque spec on these and get this torque down. When you're tightening these down, even when you're just getting them snug, you want to go back and forth, turn a little bit, turn a little bit, turn a little bit, turn a little bit. If you tighten the one side, tighten the other side, it could be hectic. You can mess something up. Give me my shit. Snap one guy put a brand new head on this thing and I can't get my damn sockets off. So I'm starting with 15 foot-pounds. So now everything's snug down, we can start putting some torque. Okay, 15. Okay. And up it to 30. There you go. That's the first piston. Let's see if you spin this around, see what she's like. Oh yeah. See, she's gonna be scraping off all the surface rust. Kind of just clean it off as it gets it out. Oh yeah. Alright, so we got all 4 pistons and rods mounted up in the motor. Torqued them all down. ARP recommended 45 foot-pounds for these. So spray WD-40 down all the cylinders just to help get rid of some surface rust. But yeah, this thing's turning nice and easy. Should be relatively easy to turn. I'm using a small hand ratchet here. This isn't anything longer than maybe 10 inches. And I'm using just a little bit of force to get this thing to go. If you're having to really crank on it to get it to rotate, then something's wrong. You probably have the incorrect torque or did your torque sequence weird. You should always do one rod at a time. Put one in, tighten it all the way, go to the next one. Put this one in, tighten it all the way to 45, next one, this one, and so forth. So yeah, I think our job here is done. We got a complete short block. Yes, sir.